Hey guys, welcome back. This is delving into the cinema screen is what I was going to say. Fuck.
Go again.
Reset.
Reset that. All right, cool. Ready?
Hey guys, and welcome back. We are delving into the silver screen. I'm Steph.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm way too hyperactive today.
Caffeine?
No, actually, no caffeine. Oh, I've had a glass of vodka.
Okay. This is
not,
drunk Steph.
Not straight vodka. No,
all right, for your listeners, this is going to be an
even.
episode with drunk Steph. So this is going to be okay.
It's not even. I always have like a glass to like wind down at the end of the day. But when I said that, I realized it sounded like
that
I've had a
sounds
whole
like
glass
such
of
like
alcohol.
an adult thing to do.
It's not. I haven't had a whole glass of vodka. I had a little bit of kombucha left, and I was actually mixing it with the vodka just to see what that tasted like. Usually it's ginger ale.
See, I would have thought like you would have been more like a, have a sipping wine, kind of when you're winding down from. No, you don't do that. Okay.
No. I'm a smooth and dry whiskey kind of gal, but I don't have any whiskey. I only got vodka today. Anyway, guys, it's kind of exciting. Adrian and I delved into something a little bit different this week. We watched Black Mirror's Bandersnatch.
Yeah, boy.
And yeah, actually, Adrian, I didn't even know that it's a choose your own adventure movie, which I didn't even think was a thing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fully interactive narrative, and it's pretty intense. It's really good, and we'll talk. Well, we had very differing experiences the first time we watched it.
Yeah,
mine didn't last very long.
No, it didn't. We should make a note that because it's an interactive thing, and Adrian and I are a sucker for a good story. We've played it. I suppose that is technically what we did.
I've been referring to like being playing it. I've been saying that. So hell yeah.
So we've done it a couple times to see if we got different outcomes and how we might be able to kind of manipulate the system.
Yeah, I think today was my fourth time going through it as much as I could.
Oh wow!
So okay, I've been really hitting it because I really enjoy it, and I've been really trying to get every ending possible. But anyway, we'll get to that later. Well, Steph, I think we'll just jump into our weekly brief.
Oh yes, my favorite part.
Yeah, mine too. So we have actually like a lot of varying news stories that I found. 3 of them are like big movie news, and the others are kind of industry stuff. So our first one, I'll kind of start with light. It's so Beatlemania is returning next year. So basically, Peter Jackson is helming a documentary of the like spanning the length of the Beatles' like career.
Oh, Beatles is in the band.
Yeah, the band.
Oh my gosh, it took me a hot second. First of all, I thought Beetlejuice, and then I thought it was a Beatle documentary, like an actual.
Right, yeah. Well, I thought Beatlemania would have given it away.
I mean, it does when I realize, I'm like, oh, that's what it was called when the Beatles were big. Yeah, no. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. So the interesting thing about this documentary is that it's comprised of 55 hours of never before seen or heard recordings and video of like behind the scenes stuff of the band.
Okay. Is it like a 6-season series? 55 hours?
Yeah. 55 hours of recorded behind the scenes footage and audio recordings of the band that have just never been used before. And Peter Jackson is going to turn that into a documentary, probably with some interviews from like, the surviving Beatles and their other career people and friends and family and things like that.
Fair.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, side note, did you know that John Lennon and Yoko Ono had a son, and that son is a singer, and he has a beautiful voice?
I didn't even know they had a kid.
Yeah. Neither did I. My brother was just playing a song in the car the other day, and I was like, Yoko Lennon. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if? And he goes, yes, it is. Boy. And I was like, get out of here. That's great. And he has a beautiful voice. Anyway, sorry.
That's good because Yoko Ono is notorious for not having a good singing voice. She's awful.
Oh, really?
Have you never heard her sing?
No.
It sounds like. Have you ever tried to bathe a cat?
Yes.
That's kind of what I equate it to. It's just a whole lot of noise. and it kind of hurts your eardrums. So this film has actually been in the works, not in the works, but like there was supposed to be a Beatles movie. Like you'd think for like the biggest band, one of the biggest bands in the world, there's never been like a proper doco or film about them besides like the ones they made during their career. But
I just want to say that it's probably really difficult to do a movie on or a biopic on someone or a bunch of people who are still living. That's why rights to those movies always go when people die.
Yeah, well, that's part of why this never got off the ground, like for decades, because the estates of the past, George Harrison and John Lennon, have been really fighting having this be a thing. Because Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr have wanted to do it for a while, and I think during when this news came out, it was. John Lennon was kind of quoted, like from an old quote he made, like part of the reason why the Beatles broke up is because Paul McCartney wanted to like heavily commercialize them more than what they already were, and he didn't really want that because John Lennon kind of transitioned to this weird kind of existential phase of his life, and that's why it never happened.
I feel like having been an adult for a little while now,
a little bit.
I totally understand that idea of John Lennon becoming this weird. From a child perspective, this weird hippie character, like he just wasn't. Poor guy wasn't built for the public eye. Like he just wanted to make music, and it wasn't as easy as that. And I feel really bad for him. So I don't know how I feel about this Beatlemania movie, especially with Peter Jackson doing it. Like that just seems like it's weird. Okay, on top of sellout.
So I'll explain why Peter Jackson's doing it. So I thought when I heard that. First, I was like, okay, out of all the people, why Peter Jackson, for this? And so the reason why is because last year he actually released a film called They Shall Not Grow Old, and it's actually a restoration doco of World War One, like that's been transitioned into color. And
nice.
So he rebuilt a film about, obviously about the war and stuff, and that did really, really well. And I guess either the estate or some producer somewhere saw that, was like, hey, maybe we can get this guy. Like he may not be directing it, but he's just like, I guess Peter Jackson is helping like create it.
Yeah.
And so it's through that restoration doco that he's got this.
Yeah, I suppose if he had the restoration project and he seems to have done it justice, maybe they think that he's going to be the most respectful.
Yeah. Well, that's the case because I haven't seen the World War One documentary, but I did watch the trailer for it when I found this out, and it's not like this really weirdly glorified world doco. It's about like really human stories about what a lot of these people had to go through, especially like the trench warfare and stuff. So I actually do really want to see it. So that's kind of cool. So the next thing is James Gunn news. So he's notoriously known recently for being fired by Marvel and Disney. He was supposed to be the Guardians of the Galaxy. He was the Guardians of the Galaxy director, but after he wrote the script for the third movie.
The first one or both?
Oh, both. So he directed both. And he just finished writing the script for the third one. A month later, he gets the axe because of some old tweets that he put out. And so... It was rumored way back after, or actually just after he got kicked out, that Warner Brothers was looking to get him on because they wanted to kind of use his charm and the way he kind of revamps projects to kind of bring life to some of their characters. And so it's been confirmed now he's actually going to write and direct the Suicide Squad sequel. And so this is kind of weird because it sounds like from what I've heard from the announcement Warner Bros. Made is that this is more of a reboot, not like it's a sequel, but it's all new cast of characters, like different, what they had the first one, and it doesn't seem to be like they're going to really.
So when you say different characters, you actually mean so it's not like Harley Quinn?
No. So it's a whole.
It's actually
it's a whole new
different set of DC heroes.
Villains. Yeah, it's a whole new group of Suicide Squad people, and so that as soon as I heard that told me, okay, this is more of a reboot. Well,
I think it really depends because I don't read the comics, so I don't know the premise of the Suicide Squad. Whether they're I don't actually know that the Suicide Squad is the same four characters throughout the comic books.
There's heaps. Like they die and they run through like dozens of them. So
I don't really see it as necessarily being a reboot, but I suppose it's not really seen as a sequel either because it doesn't have the same characters.
Yeah,
but it's more like almost like a spin-off.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, because if they don't retread any narrative points from the first one or any character references,
it's a standalone.
It's a standalone thing. It's basically, yeah, okay. So I guess that's fine. And like I'm fully on board with this, because obviously James Gunn, he brought a pretty vague and very unpopular guys. You know, the Guardians in the comics that weren't really, you know, the best well-known thing, and so he brought
and he made them dope.
Yeah, he made them huge and awesome. And so, and obviously the first Suicide Squad movie didn't do that great. So hopefully he can bring that same charm to this. And so it's good that what happened to him last year hasn't like soiled his career. So the next thing is, so it's long past now, but it's industry kind of like awards. So basically the SAG Awards happened, I think, last week. So that's the Screen Actors Guild Awards.
Yes,
for anyone who wasn't aware.
Emily Blunt won for Quiet Place.
Quiet Place, yeah. And so I got in my notes here, I said, soccer mums across America are rioting in the streets because A Star Is Born was snubbed for every category for the SAG Awards. Because it's A Star Is Born. I haven't seen it, but weirdly, it's being heralded as like it's going to be like the Oscar, like it's going to steal the Oscar season. Because it's nominated for almost like every category: actors, sound, or obviously music, best picture, stuff like that.
Yep.
And so so like Bradley Cooper lost to Rami Malek, who Malek won for, I think he won the Golden Globes for Bohemian Rhapsody, and he's won again. In the SAG Awards, and Lady Gaga lost to Glenn Close. And the film in general was actually beaten by Black Panther, who won the Outstanding Performance by Cast. Which is weird, because out of all the movies for that particular nomination, like you give it to Black Panther, the Outstanding Performance for a Cast, and you give it to just like... Again, like this
political
is, we talked about this last week, but like Black Panther's really getting the attention for the wrong reasons.
And I think it's also really difficult, because there's kind of this, like, I don't actually know anymore if the movie stands alone as an outstanding performance or whether it's only for the hype. You know, like it was like, because I didn't watch it until after I heard about all the hype, and so I'd already loved it before I started, and so I'm like, I don't actually know if it's a decent movie.
Besides, like maybe Andy Serkis playing like Ulysses Claw, and maybe Michael B. Jordan as Kilgrave, like those two are really awesome performances. Like those guys give it everything, but everyone else,
Michael B. Jordan, he was fantastic. I loved how damaged his character was.
Oh, totally.
That was my favorite.
And so I guess you have really good outstanding performances in a movie, but then you give the award for like an overall cast performance, and I mean everyone else kind of was just meh. And again, that's just my subjective opinion, but I really just wish Black Panther won on its own merits, not because of the hype that
I wish the movie, the concept, not the concept, what do I want? I wish that the movie and the hype that it had, and the the predominantly people of color and the predominantly female cast, I wish it had been put in a different context outside of a superhero film.
Yeah, okay.
Because then it would have made me feel so much safer in my love for it. You know, like how much of it do I love because it's a superhero movie and it's part of this massive saga, and how much of it do I love because of what it is?
Well, it seems to be, because I remember when Black Panther was coming out, Disney or Marvel, sorry, they knew obviously it had to be successful, but they had no idea it would like bank like over $1 billion, and so I think
it's probably a fair reason why it took so long to be made.
And I think because the fact that it just smashed the box office so hard, they want to ride that win for as long as they can, sure. and so if they can smash out like, you know, SAG Awards and Golden Globes and Oscars, like they can cement that this is like the hype was real for a reason. But you know, it's an enjoyable movie, but I don't know, I'm kind of sick of this, and it's very, you know, it's kind of reminds me of like for your consideration campaigns that movies and companies do for award seasons and Oscars, and I'm kind of like, it's kind of like, it's very surface level and it's not really meaningful. So anyway, but with the SAG, there was an award given that actually meant something, I think, for the industry itself and me personally. So Alan Alda was given the SAG Lifetime Achievement Award by the dad of Hollywood, Tom Hanks. And so, you know, Alan Alda, obviously, you know, most famous for playing Hawkeye and MASH. So it's pretty cool. I'm glad he's still alive, because I think most of the cast, MASH is dead now. But
I
you
mean,
know,
it is an ancient TV show.
yeah, and I don't know what it's himself. I think he's like close to 90 or something. But I think it's really cool that you know, he's staying relevant, even though MASH ended like in the 70s, whatever it was.
Yeah, he wasn't
and
like this one hit wonder. He actually
yeah,
is
no.
decent.
So
Yeah.
it means a lot that, you know, he won, especially because it was for the Acting Guild Award that he won this. So I think, yeah, this is probably like the last thing of note we'll ever see from him. But it was a really cool way for the SAG to end out the night. Was giving him the
Yeah.
award.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So the only other major news, it's brief, but it's more for local for Australia, for us in Queensland. So actually sometime last week, can't remember, I should have wrote down the date, but Brisbane, actually just outside Brisbane, they opened up their own film studios in a suburb just south of the city. And
Very cool.
yeah, so they've been building that for a while. It cost about $12 million, and it's for Screen Queensland. Yeah, I think it's in Herment, whatever that suburb is. Yeah, so that opened officially, I think, a week ago now, and so it's going to bring a lot more business for the film industry in Brisbane and Queensland specifically, because
That's super exciting, but also terrifying because Brisbane is already a super busy city.
Right, yeah, because before that, like the main hub for filming in Australia for outside or even internationally and domestic was, you know, you go to Victoria or you go to Gold Coast, and now Brisbane has something. So you're right, like we're gonna have a bigger influx of tourists, you know, for like when they start filming stuff here, and then it's gonna get a little busy. So I'm glad. Like I'd really love if I could stay in Brisbane to try and utilize the fact that there's now, you know, that's happened. But it's exciting. So hopefully, yeah, we see a lot more international films come and be filmed here, so it's cool.
Yeah,
go Australia.
Fingers crossed.
Whee!
Yeah, go Australia. Good job, us.
We're doing good. So yeah, that pretty much ends the weekly brief.
Do you want to lead them into the premises of Bandersnatch? Because I didn't know anything about the synopsis before we started.
Keep having these vivid dreams, like thinking weird things.
What sorts of things?
We're gonna be a hit factory, like Motown, but for computer games. You heard it here first.
Bandersnatch. It's an adventure game based on the book. Jerome F. Davies was a genius.
See that bloke who went cuckoo and cut his wife's head off?
When it's a concept piece, bit of madness is what you need.
Bandersnatch, basically it's like we said before, it's an interactive film where viewers make decisions for a young video game programmer named Stephen Butler, who's played by Finn Whitehead, who's most known for his very brief speaking role. Well, he's the main actor in Dunkirk, but he pretty much doesn't speak. So it was weird. It was weird to see him actually talk and act, because in Dunkirk he's really non-emotive. So it's cool. So basically, the premise is he's adapting a Choose Your Own Adventure novel into a video game, and it's based in 1984. So during the height of like the video game boom for like for homeowners and stuff like that, when like the first consoles were made and PC gaming became like a proper thing. And so it's basically Bandersnatch is a Black Mirror feature. I think the first.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly run down like what Black Mirror is and why that's relevant. So Black Mirror is it's a British anthology science fiction series, kind of heavily influenced and inspired by The Twilight Zone, which is so it deals with like a lot of controversial and contemporary topics. I think usually set in like alternative presents or futures. But what differs Twilight Zone from Black Mirror is Black Mirror kind of delves more with humanity's relationship to technology. And you know, because they deal a lot with like, you know, so government like mind controls, or you know, like people going driven insane by like social media, like fame or virtual reality and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a super famous episode if you're in the LGBT community called San Junipero.
Oh right.
If you know nothing of Black Mirror, I'm sure you will know of San Junipero.
Originally, Black Mirror, so it's a British production, British show, and after 2 seasons, Netflix really kind of wanted to attain it because it's huge. It became an international success, and so I think after around 2013 or 14, they commissioned a series to go like straight away. And so they did about 2 seasons, and then Netflix was recently exploring interactive projects for a few years, mainly for children. So they did like Puss in Boots. They did a Stretch Armstrong one, and I think their first was like a Minecraft story mode kind of thing they had Netflix. So they've been trying to do this for a while. And Charlie,
okay.
Yeah. So a couple of years, and Charlie Brooker, who's the mind behind Black Mirror, he had this. He wanted to utilize Netflix experience with interactive stories and take it to a whole new level. And they were 100% on board with this. And they're like, "Oh, cool, let's do a feature film." And so he wrote the original 170-page script. He wrote it in a program called Twine, which is really interesting. So it's a program where it's like a typical screenwriting software, like Scrivener or Final Draft or whatever, but it's specifically made to help link like branching narratives, or mainly for like storyboarding type things.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of predominantly how he wrote this, So it's interesting because the 5th season of Black Mirror was actually pushed back almost a year just to work on this feature. To work on this film, Bandersnatch, because I guess Charlie Brooker really wanted this to be like almost like a magnum opus. Like he sunk everything into it, and he even has said that there's hours left of the film on the cutting room floor, and even actual alternative scenes that viewers can never actually even access ever, because there were format changes made to the show after the segments were shot. So there's so there's endings that we're never ever going to see, but it'd be kind of cool to know what they are. But the only other note for the background of this is that the premise is based around a British gaming company called Image Software that was a huge deal back in the 80s, and they were actually developing a game very similar to the premise of what's in here. And the game was unreleased, and the company filed for bankruptcy, and they kind of dissolved. And it was a very infamous thing that happened over in the UK, and so that
explains like a key element of one of my storylines.
Yeah, so that's kind of where Charlie Brooker kind of took this, because it's very meta in so many ways. But
oh my gosh, so meta.
Yeah, so that's all my production kind of background.
I have a question, and
go for it.
I hope you found it in your research, but you may not have. Bandersnatch, is it actually a book, or is it something that they created in the story world?
So from what I found, Bandersnatch is actually the name of the game that Image Software was going to release back in the 80s.
Ooh. Was it based on a book though?
No, not that I found. All I knew was that Charlie Brooker said it was like a direct reference by name and kind of premise for the game that Image Software didn't release. So I don't know if it's based on the book or anything, but yeah, I definitely know that the game that we're going to make was actually called Bandersnatch. So
that's really cool.
That's really cool, right? So I want to start by saying, this movie, I guess it's a movie, it's meta on so many levels that when we first watched this, like my brain almost broke, like try to comprehend, well, I guess especially the second time, because the next day I watched it, I played it for like hours. And my mind was just melting, thinking about how just writing this would have been such an insane task.
Oh, I love that you were thinking of the writers, because I was thinking of the poor editor.
Oh, well,
I was watching it
really
just being like,
job.
Could you imagine being the editor of this, being like, which version of this am I doing right now?
Yeah. Well, that's what Carly said, because I got her this afternoon. I got her to play through it, and what was funny was that I don't know if it's because we've been together for so long, but. For her first 2 goes, she verbatim made the exact same choices I did.
Oh, really? That's really cool.
And I was like, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, I wonder if that's like just a coincidence, or if maybe like our personalities are kind of really close, and so we kind of I thought that was a really unique thing to do. But I want to mention first that when we first did this, I think it was on a Friday, that I royally screwed up, and my story ended really quick. And then you went on for a lot longer than me. I died really early.
Half an hour, 40 minutes, and you were done.
Yeah,
and it took me 2-3 times that amount of time.
Yep. Yeah.
Which was really interesting. Because, so what happens I feel like we should make a note that there's going to be so many spoilers in this, but also if you haven't seen Black Mirror or know the premise of it, or even like looked at Bandersnatch at all, this whole episode is gonna completely mess with your brain. Like, it's not gonna make any sense.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It's so... it's insane. And the more you play it and the more you watch it, the more you understand pieces of it, and it just the further you understand of it, the more your brain hurts. Because I remember it's almost like it finishes. You actually have the choice to either jump to the credits or go back and change a decision. So you think technically your character would have died, but you have the option to go back. And it happened so many times that I got really startled when I did actually die and I didn't have the option to go back, or my story ended. I was like, oh, we're actually done now? Okay, all right. Well,
that's what happened when we first did it. I somehow led my story to a point where I had a very short, definite ending where, spoiler alert, Stefan dies very abruptly. And I'm like, oh, how did I really fuck this up? And then the next day, so I think what happened was when I first played it, when we watched it kind of separately but together.
Adrian, we'll just note that Adrian and I watched it we did it at the same time. So we were kind of like live messaging each other, our choices and stuff, and reacting to things that if you were watching another movie with someone, or if you were watching a movie after someone, you could message them and be like, oh my gosh, this moment really fucked with my head. But it was so bizarre messaging you and having you message me and both of us be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. Because we were
that didn't happen.
we were actually making some different choices. Like I remember at one point, I said to you that I think it was I accidentally I got to a point where I led Stefan to actually kill someone.
Yeah.
And then you were like, hey, what the fuck? You could do that?
I didn't even get to that.
I didn't know
I played twice and I still haven't been able to kill him.
Basically what happens is he becomes self-aware that you, the viewer, are making the choices for him while you're watching.
Not so much us, the viewer, but that.
No, but he's aware something or someone is making the changes, and it literally drives him insane. Because when you lead down different paths and maybe he dies or it hits like a juncture and you go back to make changes, he becomes he's aware to a point that he's experienced these things. But
he learns.
Yeah, but to him they come across as a dream or a nightmare, and it drives him crazy because he's having these full-on flashes of memories of something that technically hasn't happened, not in his reality anyway. And that's the important thing to mention about is that this movie basically takes place over branching alternate realities and timelines, and you really because I remember I think in the Buster Scruggs episode we talked about how I think you mentioned how most films should be, everything you see and hear is very purposeful and it all has meanings to tell and show things, where this movie I feel is probably the best example of that everything they show you, every sound, every just anything in the background of the film, it's all has a purpose. It's all reincorporated very cleverly.
I think a really good. I wanted to make one note that the idea of Bandersnatch as a concept, not the movie that we're watching, but the thing that he's creating within the story.
Yeah.
It's almost like Bandersnatch itself as a concept is cursed because the original author of the book, he goes insane with the same realizations as he's writing the book. And when Stefan is making the game, he begins to go insane. And then in some of the alternate timelines.
Oh, Pearl. You're talking about Pearl. Yeah.
Pearl ends up rewriting the game, and there's the beginnings of that realization and insanity beginning with her as well. So it's almost like this idea of Bandersnatch and creating alternate timelines causes you to rethink your own timeline, and it just causes everyone who creates it to go insane. But one of what you were saying about the everything being connected is in one of the very first choices. So the second choice, I think, is when you pick which tape to listen to.
Yep.
And then the band that you pick, the song that plays after you pick it, because I think it's either the Thompson Twins or Now 2.
Now 2, yeah.
The song that they pick then comes back further, later on in the story.
Yeah,
and I know from personal choices, because I've gone back and selected the opposite song, that the other song plays in its place where the other one would have in another timeline. So that's why I was thinking about the editor during while I was watching it,
right,
because just the idea of being able to code that to say, hey, if way back here this person selects this, at this point, this track needs to change.
Oh, okay, well, I can help explain that. So one thing I should have mentioned in my production notes was that I don't know how they did it, but so Charlie Brooker headlined. It's this weird. It's like this master program they made that helped actually in the edit suite that helped actually assemble this film.
Oh God, that makes me so much happier.
I think they called it Mother or Manager or something. So basically, this program, it would it's like almost like an AI kind of thing, and it would grab pieces of like stuff they edited and filmed, and it would help like assemble all the connecting dots that lead off into the branching narratives and stuff.
Yeah, nice.
And it was very helpful because I don't think they could have done it otherwise.
No, well, I was just thinking, because I'm not like at the moment, probably most of you listening know Adrian or myself, but if in future someone listens to this and they don't, I am an IT programmer at the moment. So like I'm aware of how to use JavaScript and programming languages to make websites and stuff do certain things. So I was trying to like wrap my brain around how that particular code would have worked inside of a film.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was making myself sick. I just couldn't fathom it. So that's reassuring. It makes my brain a lot more peaceful.
Okay,
knowing that they had a program.
I should have mentioned it, but yeah, it's really cool that they somehow created this program that could help them do that. Because I think otherwise it would have been almost like impossible to really pair everything together, because
you would have actually driven the post-production people insane. I think they would have gone into existential meltdown.
I felt like I did at certain points watching this, because like just the way some things happen and the way things were incorporated, and I'm like, oh my God, this is brutal.
So I have a question for you. When you were watching it, did you at any point try to make a decision that would, quotation mark, beat the system?
I did.
Yeah.
So my second time I tried to do that. I got an even shorter ending, and so basically I tried to have it where beating the system was where I tried to do it where Stefan doesn't go crazy, where I could try and get the game to be complete and released, and he doesn't go insane. And you can technically do that, but then the game flops. So the only way to actually get the proper good ending is Stefan has to actually succumb to his madness. Mm-hmm. So the only way for him to have the game released and for it to be a massive success is he has to actually become pretty much parallel to the author who is driven insane and actually murders his wife and stuff. And the parallel is Stefan has to kill his dad, at least his dad. You can kill multiple people in this. You can kill up to 3 people.
Yeah, I tried really hard to do a storyline where the dad didn't die. Or where Stefan didn't kill someone, and it was impossible.
So you can do that in 3 ways. So for Stefan not to kill someone, you have to do where... so there's one of the early choices when Stefan goes to show the demo to the Tuckersoft. So instead of Image Software, Charlie Brooker created Tuckersoft, which is the company that Bandersnatch is going to be made for. And early on, Stefan goes into
the production company of the gaming world.
And Stefan goes into to show them the demo, and he gets an offer from the company manager to like accept an in-house kind of like a schedule and kind of to help make the game, or you can refuse it. Yeah. And if you accept the deal, basically the game then again flops because it's kind of like run by a committee, and it's kind of not really a personal piece.
Yeah. Just 1 second, Adrian. For those of you that are not familiar with the Bandersnatch film and haven't played it yet, a way that we actually are let know that the game has flopped or succeeded is this old school TV show that plays.
I should have mentioned that.
That's all right. It's a consistent thread throughout the show that this consistent thread throughout the movie that this show rates video games.
Yep.
And depending on the storyline that you're in and or the choices that you've made, it dictates how many stars this reviewer gives you.
Yeah. So you can either get like negative kind of average reviews, or you can get like the 5-star, which is like the best
Yes.
And there's many points where you can get like many different endings where you can get, 5 stars, or so it's kind of like you really have to be smart about it. So that's why the second time I did it, like, because my second playthrough, I actually kept it going for about 2.5 hours. Like I kept making choices, and you hit like a juncture, then you go back and change things.
Yeah. I played my second time throughout the course of like an actual day because I was doing other things. So I had I was having breakfast with a friend. So I was playing, I was like watching the movie and making choices before she arrived, and then when I got home I played a little bit more, and then I had to do something else, and then I came back and I continued playing. So
No, I for some reason, like, I got sucked into it. So it's weird because even though I've seen this thing at least 4 or 5 times, like I can still, like, I still feel like I could probably maybe find another ending or another way to get to an ending that I want.
Yeah, for sure.
And because the weird thing about it is that, well, not weird, but great, is that apparently there's 6 core endings, one secret ending, and then each core ending actually has branch offs. So I think there's a total of like 12 to 13 actual technically possible endings you can have. And in my main playthrough, I managed to get 5 of the actual endings.
All right, so let us know what your endings were, because I've only had 3.
Okay,
3.
So 2. It really depends on the junctures when you choose. So the first ending, obviously, you get is where the game flops. So the game can flop in 3 different ways, I think. So that's basically one of the main ones where it gets released. Stefan retains his sanity, but the game just sucks. And another ending is where what is it? It's where he goes full insane.
There's a couple where he retains his sanity, correct?
Yeah. The only ones he retains his sanity when he dies. There's one where he can die, he retains his sanity, and then the other ones is just where the game's kind of mediocre. And the other ending I got was one where the Tuckersoft, the company, goes bankrupt because in a narrative where you physically kill Colin, the company just like tanks. Because like he was their breadwinner, and so the game doesn't get released, and he's dead. So the company goes under, and actually the company owner goes into like he's under investigation for hiring Stefan, who's like mentally unstable.
Oh really? I've got one. I had one where the company went bankrupt because my Stefan killed the head Tuckersoft person.
Yeah. See, I haven't got to where you can kill him, but I've had one where Stefan kills his father and Colin, which I was like, oh man, that's really brutal.
Yeah, no, I've only had because you were on the phone, and when you said, "Will it be ready?" you said yes. Will the game be ready? When you press no, the actual head of the company comes instead of Colin.
Oh, okay, because I said yes, and he sends Colin to come talk to you. Oh, okay, so right, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've had one where I could have killed Colin, but because I knew that yours ended, I didn't know when after that choice it ended, so I let Colin live.
Yeah.
And then I went to jail.
Yeah, so there you go. So the one the core endings where Stefan goes to jail, and then you have differences in if it's kill Colin, if you kill, I think you kill Colin's wife, or if you kill the owner. And the other main one is where, like I said before, Stefan goes fully insane. You have to at least, I think you have to only kill his dad, and then and you have to at least bury or chop him up, which is horrifying to make.
Which both are impossible choices.
Right, and then if you do that, then obviously he goes to jail again. But the gang, oh, actually no, before he goes to jail, actually he hides the fact that his dad's been dead for a while.
Yes,
and he seems to be at peace. Weirdly, he's very happy. He's talking to the therapist. Or we should say that during the film that Stefan has had like a childhood trauma in his past, and he regularly visits a psychiatrist that his dad kind of pushes him to, and she's important. She says a lot of things that are key to the narrative, and the good ending is when after his dad's been killed, he goes to her to talk about how he's better with his life now. He got the game finished, and it's very popular, and he's happy. He's content with himself, but he's fully insane.
But he dies, doesn't he?
No, not the ending. He doesn't die. It literally. So the good ending is horrible. It ends with him happily typing away his computer, and his dad's severed head is sitting on a counter, and then there's blood smeared in like symbols on the wall.
Yeah, but then you flash forward, right?
You flash forward, and it's the future, and it's Penny or Pearl, and
who is
the daughter of.
So in the very and it took me. I didn't really read the lower third of that screen showing the name of that character until the second time around.
Yeah.
But the person who in the future goes to recreate the game that
for Netflix, which is what they're saying.
Stefan made,
yeah,
who is actually the daughter of Colin, which is the original head programmer at Tuckersoft, who is played by, I don't know his name, but he was Eustace in Prince Caspian, the Narnia Chronicles, and
he's the cousin,
yeah, and Crazy Eyebrows from the Maze Runner trilogies.
Well, I see. I think his performance.
That was super meta.
I've never really liked him really much. He's done, but I think in this, I thought he was the best.
Oh, he was fantastic,
character.
And apparently, he's now taking a break from acting, which makes total sense because this film, as an actor, as the writer, as the editor, would have completely done your head in.
Yeah. I found it funny because he sounds, or Carly pointed out that he sounds like Moss from the IT crowd, the way Colin talks. And I'm like, I can never unhear that now because his mannerisms are very Moss. But actually, I want to talk about Colin because he's really, really important, not just in integral to the story, but the message.
He learns.
He does. So he's he has this existence.
He learns the same way Stefan does.
Yeah. So
which is fucked up.
So I wish we knew how it happened, but basically, so Colin is 100% self-aware of what's happening, and that basically there are multiple different timelines happening, and then there are certain junctures where things repeat, and there's a point where if you make a wrong decision or you can change it, the scene will replay, and then Colin addresses the fact that this has already happened before. And so he openly addresses it, but then your character Stefan, who has new information, but he's not sure how or where he got it from.
Yeah,
and then
it's really subtle. I don't know. See, it was really difficult for me the second time around because I wasn't able to unknow that Colin learned.
Yep.
So I remember it being really subtle, but also like a sledgehammer in the very first instance, because one of the first times you recognize it is Stefan mentions Bandersnatch, the book, and Colin's never read it. And then my timeline repeated, and it got to the Bandersnatch part, and then Colin
had read the book.
Had read it and read it in detail. And so that was like the moment you realized, and you were like, oh, wait, hang on.
Because he said he reached every ending, and then Stefan looks at him like, how the hell did you do that? And so it's
which
really,
I think is part of the idea of starting Stefan's insanity as well, is that everything is happening just like in my dream, except this point. And so then it's like, did he already dream and then come back to reality, or is he actually repeating, and so is Stefan?
The way I interpreted this, they're not actually repeating anything. It's just Stefan and Colin are experiencing parallel timelines at the exact same point. So the dream that Stefan keeps having, it's not so much a dream, it's like he experiences an event in a timeline. Then we have the core timeline of Stefan, which is the one that goes to the therapist. And then everything else is like all the other branching ones. So whenever he comes into a scene with more knowledge, or he wakes up, it's because he's experienced a different timeline, and then they're all linked to him.
So every choice that you have is a different branch, which makes sense. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the actual structure of the story and breaking it down. But as an actual, as an idea and its execution, how do you think it went? My first impression when we first played it, I suppose, I was initially like,
okay, yeah, this is like a really, really unique, very interesting piece. And at first, I think it was like there was some points where I found not so subtle, I guess the meta use of language and scenes in this was like sometimes it was to the point of like on the nose, like beating your head in, like they're trying to get a point.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene where early on where the psychiatrist is like, hey, do you want to talk about, what happened to your mum? Because who knows, you may learn something new this time. And then if you select no, she's like, but are you sure you don't want to talk about it because you may learn something new? Wink, wink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, come on. And so just sometimes when that kind of meta conversation happens throughout the film, it's like it's not bad, but it's almost to the point where it's kind of insulting.
Yeah. See, I found those moments for me, I was kind of like, oh, you're trying to trick me. So I didn't feel like I was being spoon-fed. I felt like I was being tricked.
Okay, right, sure. No, yeah, it definitely felt that to me, like they were really pushing, because that kind of goes along with the sense of at the end where it's like, free will is illusion, but whatever. But no, I really did enjoy it. I think it classifies as a thriller. I would say that's what this is. And for the most part, like I said, I did particularly like anyone's acting besides the guy who plays Cullen. I thought he was really good. And I really did like, there are some timelines that aren't as interesting as others. I think the core timeline, which involves strictly the book and like the writer who went insane, like that and the monster packs, I suppose that particular timeline where Stefan succumbs to madness is the most interesting, because you really see like his speedy decline down that hill, where there's another timeline that involves his family and conspiracies and stuff, but it's kind of like that stuff was fine and it was told well enough, but it was just kind of like it just wasn't, I don't think, just as interesting, I suppose.
I actually really found I loved how engaging it was. Not really, like, I think the story was like, it was fine. The story was fine. But the idea that it was interactive meant that you had to be paying attention, because you only had 10 seconds at each interval to make a decision. And it's not as easy as just being like, oh, if I don't, because I tried, guys. It's not as easy as just being like, oh no, I'm just not going to make a choice, and then it will follow its own storyline, and I'll get the ending that was meant to happen. It doesn't work like that.
No.
Like, it's actually not possible for that to happen, because it will always just default to the one on the left, which isn't necessarily the right choice or the choice that makes the longest storyline.
Yep.
And so I really loved that you had to be paying attention and on your toes almost, because I'm really bad at giving anything my full attention.
Oh, like, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's really difficult unless I'm maybe like at lunch or breakfast or actually sitting with someone one-on-one and my phone is away. If I'm watching something, I'm actually on another device in some other way, like multitasking. So it's really difficult for me to sit and do something. So Bandersnatch was really refreshing to actually be like, oh no, I have to be in this 100% or I'm going to fuck up. Yeah,
I can totally agree, because usually, like, say if I'm editing or like playing games or something, I usually have a podcast or something going. But with this, like, I was like, no, I like, besides texting you briefly, I'm like, my attention was 100% with this.
Yeah, exactly. And there were key moments where I actually physically couldn't text you, because I was like, if I blink, I'm going to miss something important. I wanna point out, there's actually a moment that I loved in this particular film, when it came to remembering the phone number or the number that the person was supposed to dial, and the idea that it was threaded into his memory subconsciously through different key elements throughout the movie that we'd already seen.
Well, see, I would have thought that should have worked better if they didn't have this weird like replaying like gif of like just the times when those numbers were said. Like, I think if they said the numbers, and then, because there's a point where she says, oh hey, you remember my number, right? You can call me. And then when that event happens where you're supposed to put in the digits, it'd be better
if you have a flashback.
If you're just supposed to have already picked up that the numbers have been there, and if you don't enter it, then you just don't get the ending to where that narrative goes.
I very much would have loved that, because I actually, on the second time around, I have this thing in my brain, and I can't find 3 other digits, and maybe because I just haven't experienced the long enough timeline, or maybe I wasn't paying proper attention.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if there's another section, like another part of the narrative that gives you 5 other digits.
Oh, well,
that
actually, I
aren't
think
ones that are vocalized, because when he flicks through the book,
yeah,
you see very distinctively an 8 for chapter 8. And then there's somewhere else where he sees the number 3 very distinctively.
Yeah, because I think the number 3 is when he walks out of her office, like the camera kind of hangs on the room number. And I had the same idea. I'm like, okay, because this movie is all about different choices, and so I thought there has to be a point where you can put in he calls something else or someone else, and then you get a completely. That's where I thought maybe that's
but
where the
I can only find 2 digits.
Well, that's why I thought this is maybe where the secret ending comes in, where if you put in a new set of numbers, you get like that secret ending, because I can't find any evidence online of what that is.
Yeah.
And
see,
so
because I'm wondering, because at that point, he's generally already become aware of the PAX, guys, if you haven't watched PAX, it's a reference to Pac-Man, because fun fact, I didn't know this, and I hope that this is a true fact and it's not just something that TV has lied to me about. But the PAC, the PAC of Pac-Man actually stands for program and control.
Control, yeah.
And so there's this concept that he is essentially a Pac-Man. He is programmed and controlled to make certain choices. But it's his dad that ends up being the programmer kind of thing. And he's not a computer so much as his trauma from his past is actually a hallucinogen that, given key verbal cues, makes him think that there is a trauma.
Yeah, like hypnosis kind of.
Yeah, and so in the 2 timelines that I lived, he only experienced the moment where he called someone after he discovered PAX and then killed his dad.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I had the same the first time.
So I had this feeling that the number that he calls,
yeah,
like if it's not the psychologist's number, if it's that 83 something,
yeah,
maybe he actually ends up at the headquarters
of a PAX. Okay, that actually might be really cool. Yeah, right. Like
I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. It's just like it really messes with my brain, and I like that idea. But then now, and every time I was like, oh, there has to be 3 other numbers, and I just couldn't find them. So if anyone listening has seen it and knows those 3 other numbers, please effing tell me.
Yeah, tell us what they are, because the program control timeline is the one I didn't like. It has a payoff if you choose, like, so there's a payoff where Stefan literally regresses back in time to a younger version of himself.
Yeah.
And that's the only part of that specific timeline with the PAX that I think actually pays off and is actually worth something.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Like as a writer to decide, because in reality that baby Stefan, maybe he doesn't, but in my brain that baby Stefan knows what's going to come. And so your choice is to either let her die alone or go with her.
Yeah,
but I suppose baby Stefan wouldn't know that, would he? Because there wasn't a choice to delay her more.
Well, for me, I took it as because Stefan, he transitions back to the baby. So I took it as it's the same Stefan, but he's just in the body of the baby.
Yeah, right? And if that's the case, then wouldn't you have a choice to delay her further so that she got the next train and didn't die? But your choices are to either let her die alone or die with her.
Watching it again this afternoon before we recorded, the point when he goes with his mum and then the accident happens, it cuts back to Stefan in the therapist's office and he's just died. Like the therapist says, like, he closed his eyes and he just kind of just somehow died. And I'm trying to understand.
So that's the moment.
Yeah.
Because I realized this watching it the second time as well. I'm just cutting you off again. Sorry.
No, go for it.
In that timeline, when he jumps back in time, he's actually already killed his dad. But when you jump back to him having died,
it's a different timeline.
I actually think it's that, because a key element in the storyline is they'll jump you back to when the psychologist very first asks you, do you want to talk about your mum?
About it. Yeah.
I think it's that moment
that he died.
So that's the branch. If you choose to talk about your mum, there's a certain timeline where everything you say from that point on is like in your head, and then you go back to the mum, you choose to go with her, and you die. And you've kind of, in your brain, you've processed all of the things that you needed to. You've realized you could go back, you realized you could go with her, and you decide that you'd rather be with her than in your current life with your dad.
See, that's really different to what I thought, because I took it as the core Stefan went back in time with his mum, he died, and then that completely destroyed every other timeline. Because like you said, at that point, he's already killed his dad when he's gone back through the mirror. So I thought when it cuts to Stefan in the office with his dad and the therapist, I thought that was another version of Stefan that was going through like that point where she asked him, but he died because the core Stefan died with his mum long ago. And so it like cleaned the slate. But
that's much darker.
But the only contradiction is if that was the case, then the baby Stefan dying would then all the other future stuff shouldn't happen. So him dying in the office, he should just like disappear. Like he should just be a corpse because technically, his timeline wouldn't have passed. Him being
I
a
suppose
child.
that particular timeline is a timeline where baby Stefan didn't go with his mum.
Yeah,
it's almost like okay, guys, those of you listening, I want to apologize profusely because this, if you haven't seen it, and even if you have, this podcast is probably the worst one for you to listen to because it's gonna make absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
because this whole movie makes no sense unless you've seen it and you understand the concept. Because there is no other film that I've ever seen that is like this.
No, not at all.
And it's not even possible to wrap your brain around the concept of it without seeing it.
Listening to how we're talking, it's so disjointed and we're just jumping because I don't know how to... And
that's exactly how the film is.
Yeah, and so like I don't know how to properly talk about this because it just branches off into a million different ways. So you kind of have to just follow it and then come back and then go a different way, which is just what the film does.
Yes, exactly. So if you've stuck with us this long, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I definitely recommend going and watching it and making some choices because... At
least watch it more than once.
Yeah, for sure. Even... Actually, I like the idea that Carly picked the same choices as you because maybe if you watched it by yourself and then you had your partner pick, you would be able to kind of... It'd be an interesting contrast to see what the person that you, your significant other, decides. Well, because one of the very first choices, guys, is whether to have rice puffs or frosted flakes.
Frosties, yeah.
And it makes me so frustrated because Adrian, you've said that you've played games like this before where the things that seem small actually are small things, like they don't actually do anything. But in my brain, because I've never played or seen anything like this before, I'm like, ooh, I wonder what massive changes these small ones make because they're like hidden and sneaky.
So I'll explain. So
my
obviously
brain is exploding.
Now, but the point of that beginning scene, so the film opens with Stefan and his dad having breakfast, and his dad gives him the option between the two cereals Steph mentioned, and that entire scene through the exposition of Stefan is basically setting up the premise of the movie and how this interactive feature works.
Yeah.
So Stefan basically explains to you the entire plot of the movie through context of describing the book to his dad, and then the dad shows you the two serials, which shows the audience, hey, this is the gist of how this interactive movie is going to work, and so it's all just set up so the choice has no bearing or anything else in the film besides what commercial plays on a TV in his room at some point, but it's just for the audience to get a handle on how the film works, which is fine. Like I when I saw that scene the first time, like this is a really excellent way for a setup. Yeah, like it's great. It's awesome exposition and it's very cleverly done. Like I think one of the early shots is which if you don't get a specific ending, it is no reincorporation. So there's a scene where the dad's yelling at the neighbor's dog for digging in their yard, and they draw attention to it. So obviously, if you know what this is, you go in thinking every single thing they show you has a purpose, which I've already said. But
as a film student, also we are taught specific tropes of film. So as an audience member, there's a lot of moments that you'll see where you're like, this feels like it's important. And if you're a film student like Adrian and I and some other people, obviously, that we went to school with, when you watch this, you'll actually see those moments from a film perspective and go,
Yep.
oh, they've made these specific choices
Yep.
because this is important, because they very distinctively cut. Like it almost seems
Yeah.
out of place to have a specific cut of the father
Yep.
yelling at the dog and then seeing the dog. Normally in a
Yep.
film you would see just the father yelling at the dog and then coming back and it would be the end of it. But there are a lot of
It's
moments
because they
like
show
that.
the dog.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments like that where you're kind of like actually seeing this small detail.
Like the mints on his hands. Yeah.
Yeah, it
'Cause-
doesn't seem like it's normally something that you would do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those moments where you're kind of like, ooh.
Yeah, because especially with the dad, like we just said, is with the dog, that only comes into when Stefan, if you go with the timeline where Stefan kills his dad, you have the choice to bury him, and if you bury your dad, at some point near the end, the
That
neighbor's
feckin'
dog
dog
discovers
comes
the
and gets
body.
him.
But the thing I like is that it surely signaled and flared to the audience like, hey, this is important. But if you go with a completely different timeline, that's never reincorporated, and you completely forget that that's a setup.
Exactly. And then
that's
if
what
you
I love
go
about it.
back, you're going
Yep.
to overlook the fact that the dog's there because you're like, oh yeah, that was there the first time. And you'll
Exactly.
forget by the time you do get to that storyline.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I wonder if I'm just having, you just reminded me of the mint scene because that was another moment where I looked at
Yeah, straight
when
away.
it
I'm
happened.
like, oh, what? That's weird. That's
When
clearly
it
a setup.
happened, I was like, wait, why are we
did you
seeing
sh-
that? That's
why
gross.
why did you actually show the mints on his
And
hands?
I wonder if that's actually got to do with when you make the choice to cut the body.
Yeah, 100% is. Yeah, it's a reference to that. Yep.
Because it's minced meat. He's just slashed
Yep.
into him.
Because I love that shot because
distinctive.
Stefan walks to the kitchen and his dad literally turns around. He's like, I'm defrosting mints. And he thrushes the mints into the camera. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's going to come back with. And then
Yeah.
when Stefan chops off his dad in the bath, I'm like, that's cute. Reincorporation.
Yeah.
I like it. I wanted to talk about Colin just because like I want to talk about what he represents in the deeper than what we mentioned before, because there's a scene where Colin kind of like, if you go with the more insanity part of the story, Colin basically he opens up Stefan's reality. I guess he like broadens his horizons and kind of after
How many
that-
times did you play that scene?
I
Just the
did
once?
I did it twice.
Did you pick yes and no both times? Different times?
Yes, I did. So, and the reason why Steph, I guess, brought this up is because Colin offers Stefan like I think hallucinogens, like drugs, and if you tick yes, you take it, and then the scene progresses as it usually does. If you tick no, you're like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. But as Colin, gets off his chair, goes to approach Stefan, he drops the drug in the tea, gives it to him anyway.
Yeah, guys, he drugs him
drugs him.
anyway.
Yeah, and that goes along with so there's a theme at the end, which is basically what Colin talks about, which is things are binary and there's an illusion of choice where you don't have it. And so him giving him the drugs anyway shows the point of like, it doesn't matter what you decide to do. Things are predetermined regardless, because Colin he's like on a different plane mentally than everyone else in the world. And because when they delve into like this weird hallucinating kind of like adventure, the exposition he gives, which is when Steph talked about like the PAX thing, is like he explains like he's the crux of like the meta force in this film, and he goes through like every possible, like if you think about it, he explains the nature of all the other branching realities, which is the PAX, the fact that you're aware that your choices are made for you, and then he brings up a really interesting point, which is the fact that because he's not afraid of death, Colin, and there's a point where he takes Stefan onto the balcony. And he talks about how, like, if one of them died right now, it wouldn't matter because there's an infinite amount of them in different realities. So you shouldn't care about dying because technically you're not.
Yeah, in another timeline, you're still alive because you made the other choice.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I want to know if you picked up what it was, but if you choose where Colin dies, the timeline resets kind of to a point, and only Stefan's aware that Colin's dead. But for the rest of the film, because Colin technically hasn't died, but he's just not around anymore.
He's
Like,
disappeared. That fucked with my
disappeared.
brain. I
And
hated that.
So I was like, hang on, what the hell just happened? So because Colin clearly stated before he jumped was that he'll die in this reality, but he'll be fine everywhere else. But he never shows up again. If he jumps, he just disappears. Because I had a timeline where Colin's wife shows up at the house after I killed the dad, and she's looking for Colin. And
wow. See, I had a timeline where I made Colin, because obviously I made Stefan jump first.
oh, you did? Oh
yeah.
no!
But then I come
never
back
did that.
and I made Colin jump.
Yeah.
And she came looking for him at TechSoft.
Oh, okay.
So she actually never got to the house, which is an interesting idea.
She got to the house and Stefan was like, well, yeah, remember Colin jumped and killed himself? She's like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, oh shit, hang on. And so he kind of realizes that everything that he's been experiencing, I think at that point he realizes what's happening, and then he tells her to go away. But I just really want to try and understand, like, what is Colin? Like, what is he? I
think the idea is that he
is he God? Is Colin God? Is that what's going on?
I think potentially there's this idea that he's us.
Sure. Okay.
So as we go through it, we learn more.
Yeah.
So I don't ever remember this being taught in film school,
right.
But when you're introduced to a movie or a TV show, there is always one character, and it's usually the main character, that is essentially
a point of reference for the audience.
Yeah, it's the audience, right? Yeah. So they learn as the audience does, and there's only so much that we know. So they're introduced to a new situation, like for instance, if it's a young adult show, it's generally someone starting a new school. So the idea of a new school is the new TV show, and we're introduced and we learn things as the character does. So we're almost like the Colin character. So you think we're Stefan, but because we're controlling Stefan and he's going slightly insane, there's an element of what we know that goes beyond what Stefan does. And it's almost like that's what Colin knows. Okay. So in the very first run through, Colin is kind of like, no, I've never read Bandersnatch. My game has just crashed. And then he explains it to us what the issue is.
Right.
But then
in the next timeline,
in the next timeline, Stefan precedes that, and he knows what caused the crash.
But he doesn't know why.
Yeah. But now Colin knows what Bandersnatch is. So we miss out on the exposition at the beginning, the second time around, of what Bandersnatch is, because Colin already knows it. So it's almost like everything that Colin is and says is the stuff that we need to pay attention to, and not necessarily the Stefan stuff.
That's exactly what happened. What I thought too, because in that entire scene where they're kind of like hanging out doing drugs, I was like just sinking. Like everything Colin said, I was trying to absorb it really intently, because I'm like, clearly everything this guy says is like super, super important, because you're right. That it's actually Colin who's the point of reference for us. And I just really liked how because it's weird, because he obviously is more aware than Stefan is up to a point, but he hasn't let it consume him to the point where Colin is crazy, clearly, but he's not like...
But a silent crazy.
Yeah, he's not... he's crazy, but not insane, but... because Colin says at some point that, for Stefan to create Bandersnatch, it's like, you need a little bit of crazy to make it work.
Yeah.
But Stefan succumbs to this awareness of realities and dimensions and timelines, and it drives him insane to the point where he, becomes a murderer. And I like the juxtaposition of Colin obviously somehow was able to win over that, and he kind of like didn't let it consume him. And I don't know if it's like, because he goes out trying to help Stefan, but he doesn't help him try to deal with things. He just like explains, like makes him aware of what's going on, but doesn't help him deal with it. Because I feel if he did, then Stefan maybe wouldn't have been driven to murder. Yeah,
I think there's also, okay. Oh God. Here is a tidbit of mental illness, but if you have mental illness, trying to explain it to someone else isn't going to make sense to that person until they experience it. So I think the idea of Colin is that he knows what Stefan is going through, and he could help him.
Yeah.
But there's a level of Stefan needing to experience stuff for anything that Colin says to be relevant to him.
Right. Well, yeah, because when Colin says like, "Hey, do you understand what I'm saying?" Stefan's like, "No, not really. I don't know what you're talking about." But then it's after, like you said, after Colin dies and he goes through all this, that he never mentions it, but I guess you can tell like he fully understands now what Colin was trying to tell him.
Yeah. I've just had a remembery moment.
Oh, go for it.
Colin makes a very big point of calling Pearl as a baby in his arms Daddy's legacy.
Do you think he knows? He would have to, right? You're right.
Well, see, because if Colin didn't die, he might have other children. But if he knows he's going to die, he knows Pearl is the only baby he's going to have.
Well, no, because if you have a timeline where oh no, you're right, because hang on, because I can't remember if for the game to be successful, does Colin have to die, or is it just a dad? Because no, it has to.
In both my timelines, Colin jumped.
Yeah, so Colin does die. You're right. So you're right, because his legacy. So you're right. He probably would have had more kids if he did live.
Which means Pearl wouldn't have been his legacy. He would have been a legacy, but not the legacy.
See, there you go. So that like, oh man. So Colin just somehow he was in tune with like every past, present, and future of his realities.
All right. Well, we've spoken for an hour and a half about it, and I don't think it made any sense to anybody who's listening.
I've really. Yeah, this is very disjointed. But again, so is the movie. So, I mean, take it for what it is.
From a story perspective, if I were to give it Cliff Notes, from a story perspective, I thought it was fantastic.
Sure, yeah.
Because just the insanity that would have ensued when trying to make every storyline have an ending and every possible outcome have an ending and not leave anything untied is just insane. I thought the film style was very purposeful, which I like. I don't like things that seem lost.
Yeah. Well, because I felt for my, I guess, final note, I feel like the cinematography wasn't anything spectacular, but I think the editing is really where this movie thrives.
Yeah. I just think from a director's point of view, knowing I mean, sorry, maybe I spaced out. Is the director the same as the writer?
Charlie Brooker. I should have looked this up. No, he's just a showrunner and writer. I don't think he directs them.
Okay, so the director actually understood the story incredibly well, obviously, because there are obviously those moments like cutting to the dog and cutting to the meat on the hands that he was aware of that were key moments later on in the story. Yeah. So I actually really loved those moments. So the cinematography, that's like whatever. But the stuff that you see on the screen, the way that it's filmed is a very much cinematography style, but the things that you see are a director's choice. And I think the director's choice... Yeah,
you're right, 100%.
The director's choice on what to show and when and how was very, very well thought through. So I really appreciated that.
Would you say this movie is confronting maybe for people that actually do have, suffering, a form of mental illness and stuff? Like, would you say, hey, maybe don't watch it?
Oh, that's a really good, very difficult question. I think if you're someone who suffers with mental illness, this is a touch and go kind of film. If you're someone who suffers with mental illness and hardcore dissociation and really struggles with the idea that you are your own person, this may not be...
Don't watch it? No.
No, not necessarily don't watch it, but it just may not be something that gives you peace. It might actually make you more distraught. But if you're someone who plays a lot of video games and has those same feelings, maybe it is something that's up your alley. Maybe it's something that makes you feel more connected to your reality, being like, oh, someone else has thought about this and given it as much detail as I have in my downtime. Yeah,
because I was trying to think of like, unless like you said, you're like an avid gamer or you're just really curious about different forms of like film and television.
Yes.
Do you think this is like approachable for just the general populace? Like, that's
a hard question.
Average John Smith, is he going to watch this?
Okay, from a personal perspective, if I hadn't been watching it with you, So for starters, I didn't know that it was an adventure game.
Yeah,
before we started, you told me that.
When I texted, yeah.
I was like, I'm so confused. Why are we making narrative choices?
Yeah,
we have a very specific structure when we do our podcast. We don't have narrative choices. But then it made sense after you explained it. But if I had been watching it, if I had made the choice to watch it on my own, not having you tell me that beforehand and not having the reason of doing it for the podcast, I think I probably would have had a meltdown afterwards. I don't think it would have been... Yeah, I mean, it's really good as a film thing, but if I had not been watching it with the idea of being a film movie,
so you had
if I had been watching it for joy, for a good time, I definitely would have had a meltdown afterwards because I already questioned, guys, I already questioned my existence, okay?
Okay.
The idea that there is a film that makes that more prevalent in my brain, that's not a good thing for me. The actual amount of detail that these actors would have had to go through to know which particular scene and the breakdown that they would have had to do for those scenes to know where in their timeline that they fit. It's just incredible. How about we jump into some stuff that we're looking forward to for the next week that isn't Bandersnatch related to kind of refresh our brains.
This is our What's at the Box Office.
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll be the gentleman and I'll let the lady go first.
Oh, thanks. So I actually didn't end up watching Spider-Man Into the Spideyverse because I'm
dare you?
I know, I'm poor, okay? I live like a uni student even though I have a full-time job. I did actually watch Trolls for the first time this week with my nieces and nephews. It's been out for ages and I've not seen it before, and I was really excited when it came on Netflix a little while ago, but then by the time I actually went to watch it, they'd stopped playing it and it wasn't there anymore.
That's the Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake.
Yes, correct. And it's just a feel-good film. It's a really good one to watch with my nieces and nephews, and it was one of the only ones that they agreed on, which was really nice.
Weren't they kind of terrified because like isn't the premise that like these weird monsters physically eat the
them.
trolls?
I know. See, that's something that I found out while I was watching it. I was like, this is actually really dark. Like there are some things that are happening in here that would have terrified me as a child, being like, I can't be happy or sing because some giant creature is going to want to eat me. But it was actually really fun. I really liked the adult themes and adult ideas of it. I actually really enjoyed that. Kind of similarly to like Shrek, I guess. Much more obvious. But something that I really want to watch coming up, but I don't think I'll be able to watch this week because I don't think it's out yet, is Storm Boy, the Australian production of the boy who saves a pelican and raises him, or them. I think there's multiple.
So I'll go through, but mine are pretty easy. Carly and I went to the Tivoli Drive-In in Ipswich on the weekend, and we saw a double feature of Aquaman and the Crimes of Grindelwald. So I'll just quickly, Aquaman.
Which one did you like the most?
So Aquaman is a dumb movie, but it's fun. I was no point where I was bored. Visually, it's really impressive. Grindelwald was boring. I mean, so the thing
that's upsetting.
Well, because both these movies are really long, right? So Aquaman finished at like 20 past 10.
I was going to say you didn't text me saying you were home until like 1:30 in the morning.
Grindelwald didn't finish till like well past 12. So we didn't get home till about past 1. And so I was only awake for the first...
Geographically, guys, Adrian is like nearly an hour and a half, 2 hours from where this cinema was.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a beast of a drive. And I was only awake for the first 10 minutes of Grindelwald. I fell asleep in the back of the car. I woke up at the last 10 minutes. One, because I was exhausted, but two, it was so boring.
I think you have to be a Harry Potter fan to want to.
I am. I know.
I
love the Harry Potter movies. I've read all the books and I think they're fantastic. But something about what J.K. Rowling is doing with these fantastic movies, they feel like they're for a completely different audience. My what I want to see is a Stan original called Miracle Workers.
Oh, yeah.
And this is really cool. So if anyone likes The Good Place, which is a pretty popular Netflix show.
I love The Good Place.
So this is like Stan's equivalent of that. So basically the premise is Steve Buscemi's God. And Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And Daniel Radcliffe is an angel, and Daniel Radcliffe works in the department of answered prayers. But the joke is the prayers have never been answered, so Daniel Radcliffe is crazy. From the trailer, it doesn't seem as tightly written as The Good Place. Like I really think The Good Place is like a really tight, neat script and story. Yep. While I do think it's dragging, it's becoming quite redundant now, especially with what they've set up for season 4. I think that this is obviously Stan trying to compete with that, but it doesn't seem like it's as maybe thought out. But
guess we'll find out.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'll definitely check the link for the trailer, but it's definitely something to mention.
Right. Well, guys, that's episode 3 done and dusted, and I don't actually know how long this is going to be when Adrian finally edits it.
Well, this has been our shortest episode recording technically already. So
has it really?
Yep.
I thought we've recorded for less than 2 hours in the last ones.
Nah, both of them were over 2 hours. So.
Wow. Well, okay, guys. Currently at this moment in time, it is 1 hour, 54 minutes and 10 seconds.
We did it.
And we did it. We did it in under 2 hours. Go us.
We're slowly getting more efficient at this, even though we've only done it twice. So
yes.
Yay!
I mean, well, technically 3 because we had.
Right. Okay.
We did a dummy one, just to test stuff out. No, I'm going to redo this again. Guys, that's it. That is our delving into the silver screen of Bandersnatch by Black Mirror. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stuck with us. If you've made it this far, let us know if you have seen it, what you thought of it, what ending did you get? And if you haven't seen us, let us know if we've encouraged you to see it or if we've just sent you into an existential crisis because of how around and around and around we went with explaining nothing. So definitely give it a look-see. But thanks for sticking with us through the end of episode 3.
Thank you. I think next week we should try and talk about something that's like lower on the bar of intensity, because I think after this week...
that would be fantastic. I need a brain break.
I don't want to think too hard. So can we watch something really stupid and talk about how it's stupid? That would be great.
Alrighty, guys. Well, until next time, we will see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.